Hi everyone, before we begin this new chapter of CyberTech Worlds Clash, I would like to just thank you for your time, and hope that you'll smash that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Thank you. Now on with the chapter.
CyberTech Worlds Clash, by Outlaw Realms. Chapter 6. Magical. Harry returned home after kicking the crap out of a small army of douchebag mage. Groaning in exhaustion, he stripped to his black boxers and slid into bed. He was just thankful that the Fantastic Four took care of the metahuman, as he was too exhausted. Though, it made him remember that he was planning on being at that meeting, but Seraph had already informed them of not being able to attend, luckily, as it looked so boring. It was a shame really, as it had sounded like fun getting to meet the Four. He had gotten Seraph to invite Reed Richards and the rest of the Four to dinner tomorrow, but they had prior engagements unfortunately. Though, Harry supposed it was for the best, as he really didn't want anyone else involved with his Code Red problems just yet. Though, he knew it was only a matter of time until others noticed and got involved. Harry hoped that he had most of the wizarding world in the UK under control and stable before then, to stop jerks like S.H.I.E.L.D. from swooping in and trying to take over his operation, and doing a half-assed job about it. He could do a half-assed job of everything by himself, thank you very much. Today had been very tiring, but very interesting. Harry found a sister, and now she was sleeping peacefully in the next room. He smiled, at least he found someone worth his love and protection. It was just a shame she would be worrying about him, as he was near certain that Seraph told them of his somewhat short career in the superhero business. Not that he minded them knowing, as he was certain that the moment he did go out on a code other than Red, that would be out in the open, they would link the tech to him. Harry knew that the public would at first assume that the Cyber Knight was Iron Man, or Stark's new armor model, but after Stark denied it, suspicion would be placed on his company. In the end, Harry knew he would have to admit to being the Cyber Knight. He supposed it was not too bad, everyone thought Iron Man was cool. Wonderland had just finished some of the distortion field modifications, and that would be an ongoing operation to improve the field, so now no one of magic would be able to get past the lobby without authorization, and they would not be able to teleport in or out either. Though, Wonderland was fascinated with the whole magical shielding thing. They were lusting over the fireplace travel physics. That could revolutionize the planet and advance human technology by hundreds of years. It was quite fascinating, and Harry could only hope that they could potentially make it less sickly to travel, if they could reverse engineer the mathematical equations to what seemed to amount to planetary wormhole technology, or magic in this case. However, shaking that thought off, as he didn't have the spare time to get into research mode himself, Harry had to wonder why the Death Eaters attacked twice in one day. He suspected the second attack, which was conveniently snake-faced bastard free, was to see whether the knight would show up or not. Voldemort was probably hoping it was just luck for the Cyber Knight to turn up before. However, Voldemort's minions were not so lucky, as they got the shit beat out of them, and faced the slaughter. Harry hated the fact he had to kill them, but without the prison to keep them in, it left him little choice, which was why he was now secretly creating a new supervillain prison himself, dubbed the Crater, as it was to be a half-sphere design underground. Well, it was almost fully built, but because of funding issues it was set aside, and CyberTech lawyers were already on the prowl to take control of finishing and running the prison. It would actually make CyberTech some money back, but it could also be used for marketing at a later date. It wasn't a great investment, it was barely a investment, but those magical criminals needed a secure place to be kept off the streets and from having to accidentally die in the struggle to get away from being captured. It was a bit of a grey technicality, but sometimes it was a necessity, as long as nobody innocent was hurt in the process. Harry could live with that. Harry sighed as he closed his eyes, drifting off to sleep when a knock on his door disturbed him. Sighing, he called out, "Come in," and the door opened by itself. Amanda nervously walked in, the door closing itself behind her. She wore cute blue pajama and looked really sweet standing there looking nervous, though she looked like she had been crying. I can't sleep," she whispered sadly. I think it's only really just sunk in," she continued, looking down towards her small bare feet. I feel sick, they hurt my brother, and I don't want you to get hurt protecting me." "Shush, come here," he replied, sitting up, revealing his muscular chest. Her eyes widened in horror, noticing his many scars, though walked slowly to him. He pulled her caringly into his arms. Pulling the covers back, she slid in and he covered them both, hugging his sister tightly as they lay, and she started silently sobbing into his chest. He stroked his fingers gently through her hair as her fingers pulled into his back, pulling him to her as tightly as she could, feeling his warm body. I don't ever want to lose you again," she cried in such pain it broke his heart. Harry kissed her head. "I won't ever leave you if you won't leave me, I promise with my heart and soul." "I promise I won't ever leave you," she replied with conviction, sniffling a little as she lightened her hold on him. Pulling back to look into his eyes, she smiled sadly with a few tears still in her eyes. She then leaned towards him and her lips touched his, gently kissing for a moment before pulling back. Amanda giggled a little at his befuddled expression as she snuggled back down into his chest and sighed in comfort. "Harry," she whispered gently. He mumbled while cuddling her in return. She laughed a little with a hitch to her voice. "Be careful. I don't want to lose you now I have you." Harry kissed her on the top of her head. "I am the most careful man in the history of men." "You lie so easily, so I don't think so," she said, laughing as she pulled back from her brother and looked at him in the dark, then gave him one last kiss on the lips to express all of her pent-up frustrations and feelings before snuggling down. "Good night, Harry," she said with a laugh aimed at her brother. "Ginny's great, you know," she suddenly said through a yawn. "She is really sexy, got a nice ass, great boobs, and she's totally fun to hang out with." Harry chuckled while rolling his eyes in the dark. "It sounds more like you want her yourself," he replied in amusement. Amanda startled. "Harry," she complained, but it felt half-hearted. I love," she trailed off for several moments and Harry realized she wasn't going to continue. He laughed a little more as he squeezed her comfortingly, squishing her chest into his maw. "You'll find yourself," he replied. "I'll be here for you both no matter what your choice is. Happiness is better than pandering to idiots or fearing rejection. Being rejected is better than never knowing. Then you can move on and find happiness elsewhere." "Thanks, Harry," she answered with a soft sigh. We've been best friends for years, and we've done some things together, and hang out every day, and I love being with her all the time and. "You'll figure things out," Harry said gently as he felt his sister curl tighter into his side. The next morning, after waking in a tangle, Harry and Amanda had a little large hard and embarrassing problem as Harry was having a glorious morning, which was pressing quite hard into his sister. Harry was just thankful Amanda saw the humor in it, and thankfully they were both wearing clothing that got in the way. But then he had to suffer her staring at the monster bulge as it was poking up through the firm elastic of his boxer shorts while teasing him, which was added to as Seraph joined in the tease fest before promising not to bring it up again while she left his room and wiggled her tongue at him in tease before she left him alone. Sighing, Harry had to have a nice cold shower. Amanda might have been his twin sister, but she was still practically a stranger and her jammies were quite tight to her tight and beautiful body and he was still only a young man. After Harry and Amanda arrived at the breakfast bar after dressing and ate their breakfast with Ginny, Harry was pretty sure by the endless teasing looks that Ginny and Amanda shared that he was sure Amanda had not kept to her no telling embarrassing things word she gave. Seraph took the girls to show them how to accomplish their new jobs, show them around, and introduce them to a few other scientists. While the girls were being shown around, Harry snuck off to his secret lab with plenty of work to accomplish to keep his promise to Amanda, and help stop Voldemort and Dumbledore. Harry was busy for the next month, and the weekend approached fast. He had gotten to know his sister and Ginny well in their spare time and Ginny more while he was actually doing official work, as Amanda worked mainly from hers and Ginny's office while Ginny had to follow him all over the place. Amanda had been a little worried about her brother, he kept disappearing at the oddest moments. It bothered and worried her as she didn't want him to get hurt. She would be happier if she could watch to keep an eye on him. However, in happier news, she noted in the wizarding newspapers the Cyber Knight had been taking care of all the Death Eater attacks on Muggles. But what was annoying, the British Ministry had been condemning his actions as murder. Sure, he may be offing them, but it was a war and in war both sides were supposed to suffer casualties, not just innocent people. However, it was lucky most of the wizarding civilians did not seem to care what the ministry said as someone was taking care of the Death Eaters, even if it was violently. Amanda kind of agreed as she knew that the Cyber Knight couldn't capture them for the corrupt ministry to let go hours later. Amanda was a little surprised none of the Order had come to try to take them back yet. It made her wonder what Dumbledore was up to. She knew he was still alive, unfortunately, since the papers would have reported his death if he passed. Ginny was beyond confused though. Her parents had not even tried to come and get her either, not that she would leave. She got to spend plenty of time with Harry. She also enjoyed her work, she got to see and even try loads of fun new stuff, and Amanda was really fun. They got to do whatever they wanted whenever they wanted. However, Ginny knew that the wonderful happy days would probably not last and wondered what Dumbledore was plotting. It was most likely some evil scheme he thought was the purest of goodness. Harry enjoyed a good laugh though when Amanda told him about the first prophecy where she was supposed to defeat Voldemort with some kind of power he knows not. Harry had no faith in a prophecy. It seemed quite lame really that the wizards were such weaklings they relied on a baby to rid them of Voldemort. They were both self-fulfilling so as far as Harry was concerned, they were both ridiculous. It was a Sunday and Harry thought it would be useful to finally buy loads of books on magic, so they knew what they were up against and because Wonderland wanted some more reading material since they had gotten hold of a few things, it was deemed a good idea. Plus, if they could prove magic was a science then they could potentially mix technology and science, potentially creating a technology that created mana which would create magic. Therefore, Amanda and Ginny took Harry to Diagon Alley where he changed some Muggle money into these interesting gold coins. Amanda and Ginny used magic to shrink all the bags of books that they had just bought. Neither Amanda nor Ginny could believe that they were walking out of the bookshop with a copy of every book they owned in their combined pockets. Amanda. Ginny. They were startled as their names were called and looked around to see their good friend Hermione Granger quickly hurrying over from across the cobblestone path. "Oh, hey Hermione," grinned Amanda, happy to see her after this past month without any contact. "What are you guys doing here?" she asked, blushing as her eyes drifted over Harry. "Just shopping for some books," replied Ginny, understating how many books. "So, what have you been doing?" Hermione asked in wonder. Dumbledore's been driving us all crazy, she added, rolling her eyes. They've been trying to apparate and portkey into CyberTech, but they keep bouncing back. Harry burst out laughing. Ha, my distortion field's doing its job then. Did they not consider using the front door? Hermione shrugged. I don't think so, she agreed, wondering what a distortion field was, but decided to ask another day. Dumbledore keeps going on about Amanda not being safe with you, she laughed. I don't think his brain works right anymore. He says you're an enemy bent on revealing the magical world. Though, sometimes I've been tempted myself. They all laughed. Yeah, if he can't get to us, what makes him think Voldemort can? Asked Amanda amusedly. So, what are you doing here? She continued to change the subject. Hermione rolled her eyes. I've been ordered here to watch out for Death Eater attacks. Supposedly, Snape said, since the Death Eaters keep getting slaughtered by the Cyber Knight. Her eyes flicked suspiciously to Harry here, but he pretended not to notice. When they attack the Muggles, so they're going to attack Diagon Alley instead, she sighed, shaking her head. The stupid old man and Ministry are condemning the Cyber Knight as a murderer. However, the Muggleborns and Half-Bloods just think of him as a soldier defending his people. Though most of the Muggleborns are torn about whether he's the new Iron Man or a new crazy rich superhero. Well, I'm sure he's doing a fantastic job kicking ass, Harry interrupted as the three girls gave him a look, which caused him to chuckle nervously. So, if Dumbledore were imprisoned, you would dance with joy, huh? Hermione just looked at him in hope. If you throw the Nutter in jail, I'll kiss your ass, she declared, causing Amanda and Ginny to burst out laughing. You best hurry up then, Harry giggled Ginny. Hermione doesn't swear or be naughty much, if ever, so I figure she's serious. They were then interrupted from their conversation by many popping noises as about 40 Death Eaters appeared on the street. Harry quickly pushed the three girls out of the way, into the doorway of the bookshop, as many panicked shoppers ran around screaming for their lives while the laughing Death Eaters began their attack. Looks like Snape was right, said Amanda, very worried as she watched her brother nervously as he looked to have just been about to sneak off. What the? Harry suddenly yelled out, pointing into the street, and the three girls foolishly looked but saw no threat and looked back to see him missing. I can't believe we fell for that, Hermione said in annoyance as she and the other two drew their wands, also looking annoyed. How long do you think it will take the Cyber Knight to show up and put a stop to this? I don't know, replied Amanda, looking around worriedly. Though he always manages to get to the attack sites quite fast, he doesn't have Siren with him here. Suddenly Amanda's eyes widened in horror as a familiar green beam headed her way. She was frozen, frightened to the spot. She closed her eyes tight. It was the end. She was a gunner. However, she did not feel it hit. Was she alive? On the other hand, maybe she was dead. In heaven. Everything had gone silent. Amanda opened her eyes, and they widened further at the sight. With his back to her stood a smoky silver and red armored warrior. She was awed as she had only ever seen pictured glimpses and artist renderings, but this was simply amazing. It was no wonder the Death Eaters were all so terrified of him. He made for an intimidating figure. She couldn't help but feel a little weak in the knees, and even a little aroused. The whole of Diagon Alley was at a standstill, all staring at the warrior in awe. The Death Eaters, even behind their masks, looked scared, shitting themselves even. Amanda could see them shaking and looking uncertain. Gone was the laughing and jeering at another's suffering, as they knew it would be their suffering next. The Cyber Knight reached down to the handles on the cannons down his legs and pulled them both up, facing the Death Eaters. 2 red beams shot out powerfully and cut through the air and burnt into the Death Eater ranks with explosive force, taking out half in one shot. They screamed in terror as they burnt to death, as others screamed for help. He released the beam cannon skirt and they lowered back into position. The Cyber Knight turned his head slightly so Amanda and friends could see his dark metal face. "Stay back," he said in a modulated voice before turning back to his enemy. Amanda gulped and slowly walked back where Hermione and Ginny pulled her further into the doorway, snuggling into each other tightly to give him as much room as he could get. The Cyber Knight then blasted off with red energy bursting out of his engine wings, and pulled back his right arm as he hovered several feet above them, punching it forward. A red curved blade whipped out, smashing down, slicing into 5 Death Eaters, and retracting. The Death Eaters started screaming more in fright and running for their lives as the Cyber Knight's blade soared towards them again, but while some had enough sense to apparate away, the others died bloody deaths. The Cyber Knight then glanced at Amanda before flying away at speed, creating a boom in the air and a red energy ring that slowly faded, but everyone's hands went to their ears because of the deafening noise. Amanda and friends just stayed together in the doorway, having just witnessed such an incredible, yet one-sided fight. It was a surprise that the Death Eaters still wanted to follow Voldemort rather than cry hiding under their beds. Amanda, Ginny, Hermione, Harry suddenly interrupted, smiling a little as he now stood before them in the doorway while panting for breath. "Are you girls okay?" "Harry, you idiot!" Amanda yelled angrily as she glomped into his welcoming arms and cried into his chest. "Why do I have to find such an irresponsible, selfless brother?" He chuckled and kissed her forehead lovingly. "I guess this truly means that nobody is perfect." She pulled back but still held him. "Shut up or I am so kicking your ass," she growled playfully with tears running down her cheeks. Harry laughed and pulled her back into a hug and gestured for Ginny to join them, and she was quick to. "You know, Dumbledore will be here soon," Hermione said quickly, interrupting the sweet scene and causing them all to pull back with sour expressions. "You should leave before you have to beat up Dumbledore and the Order too." To be continued.
Thank you very much for listening to my fanfiction audiobook. I hope you enjoyed this chapter. Please subscribe, leave a comment, and hit that thumbs up button, and you'll be hearing from me on the next chapter, sometime soon. You can also follow me on Twitter at Outlaw Realms.